Right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, world. I hope. Yeah, we're definitely streaming on Facebook. Hello, Facebook. If anyone's watching us on Facebook, do consider joining us via Eventbrite to get the best view. How are we doing on Twitch? Oh, it was streaming on Twitch. Hello, people on Twitch. I hope at some point. Let's make sure I mute myself. Not sure what's happening on YouTube, though. All right, well, listen, I think it's time to kick off and say hello and welcome to another week of Let's Kill Twitter. My name is Julian Hall. I am your host for the evening, or one of the hosts for the evening, because I'm just about to introduce my co-host. Let's Kill Twitter is basically somewhere that you can detox your timeline with the art of conversation, or at least that's how the catchy little phrase I came up with goes. Whether that's true, we'll see. But it's a place. I'm not going to say necessarily a safe place, but it is a place to unpack the fun things of Twitter, of which there are many, and some of the trickier subjects too. It's been quite an insane time. We're 2 weekly at the moment, and we did mean to do a little mini update, but various things got in the way of that. And of course, that was the whole week of Calamity at the Capitol, which is Trump's own words, Calamity at the Capitol, which I think would make a fantastic movie, fantastic Western movie anyway. So we've missed, I'm not sure if we're going to reach back far enough to 2 weeks ago, but we certainly, a couple of tweets tonight I've noticed are picking up on the US situation, and we've got much more to get through. And helping me get through those tweets is my co-host, Sajila Kershi.
Hey, how you doing, world? And in the world, in the Zoom world, outside the Zoom world, all the world. We're all one big place now that we have a world pandemic, because we're all going through the same thing. Yeah, we missed the best news week unfolding last week. So I'm sure that our guest might have picked up something, or we're going to have a little discussion about that. Welcome everybody. I've had a bit of a rough get. I don't know about you guys, but I think this trilogy lockdown, the third one, seems to be quite grim. Would you agree, guys, just with the nods of the heads? Yes, I think it's the toughest lockdown so far. I think it's because we have that usual thing we always do New Year's Eve, like, oh yeah, tomorrow, 24 hours later, we're going to be all different. I'm going to be thin and I'm going to be not smoking. And then in this case, we're like not going to have a world pandemic where our prime minister's just fucking up constantly. Hello, Emmy. Hello, welcome to the group. Yeah, and so but it's not. I'm not sure why that is, but I will ask the panel in a minute. I think we're going to introduce our panel to this week, which we're really excited about. Two lovely, wonderful people. I'm going to first of all introduce you to a very good comedian, writer, and she also runs workshops. If you're a bit bored over the COVID kind of lockdowns, I believe you're still running them. Is that right? Please welcome Gráinne Maguire, who I have to read out her CV because she is an amazing woman, a multi-award winning stand-up comedian and comedy writer. She's appeared on Dave's Unspun with Matt Ford. Comedy, Matt Ford is nothing. Gráinne is the star. Can I just say? Yeah. Who's Matt Ford? We don't care about whom.
Comedy Central next week.
Yes, but we'll say the same thing back. But I've got to go with the sisters here. Yeah, obviously Comedy Central's alternative comedy experience. RT is cutting edge, and she can be heard on Radio 4's The Now Show, More Money Than Sense, An Idiot's Guide, Breaking the News, Radio 2's What If. You've performed at the Edinburgh Fringe, of course, and many other festivals, and you also write for lots of comedians who are on the big telly. Is that right, Gráinne? But they get all the praise for the writing that other comedians like Gráinne do. So big up, Gráinne, everybody! Way! Woo! Welcome, Gráinne.
Hello, it's so lovely because it has been like a little bit of a grim week, like you were saying. So I have to say that introduction was just the shot of attention I needed. So thanks for that.
It's funny because when you're introduced as for a gig, and then people will say, look, just don't build me up because I don't want. But actually, I think we miss that, don't we? We miss that little bit of like, actually, I was somebody before this lockdown happened. We had some stuff. So are you finding lockdown okay? The trilogy, I think do we need any more lockdowns? I don't know, but this one is quite hard, would you say?
Well, I think, and you raised something that I actually feel very passionately about. Dry January makes me angrier, the concept of it, than basically there's been wars that have annoyed me less, because basically it's like the grimmest, darkest, most miserable month of the year, and people go, oh, this would be a good time to stop drinking. Crazy. It's like giving up suntan lotion in August. I say booze your way till we get at least 8. If we get 8 hours clear sunshine, then think about trying to be healthier. But until then,
Yes. We actually covered this on our last show. And what was Julie, would you remember what the alternative was for it was like, yeah, that was it, web dry. Basically, you don't use any social media platform.
Yeah. That's what we're really suffering from. It's all those people who've gone off social media for January. I can't remember what they call it. I don't know what the handy nickname is for it.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but I agree with you, Gráinne, because why would you give up all the joys of life, especially in entering the third lockdown? And what are you never ever going to give up during this lockdown? What are you embracing right now?
So what I've done is, so I know this isn't very original, but Netflix. My list, I've become obsessed with. If I watch something, my favorite part is like unticking it from my list, because I genuinely feel I've achieved something. So today I watched 2 different documentaries on Netflix, and then I unticked it, and I really felt like, yeah, today's been a good day. So it's like I'm homeschooling myself. So
that's fantastic. So welcome, Gráinne Maguire. I'm going to give Julian over to you to welcome our other wonderful guest.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome Francis Foster to Let's Kill Twitter. Francis is co-host of the wonderful Trigonometry, which I love. We've had Konstantin, Francis's fellow co-host, on the show, of course, a couple of shows ago, along with Viv Groskop. Some very interesting clips coming from that about social media and the big tech companies. I think we might be talking about that again. So welcome, comedian Francis Foster. How are you doing?
Hello. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm enduring this nonsense. Is how I would put it. I'm not as diplomatic as people here. I think it's a fucking nonsense, if I'm being honest. But there we go. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm doing okay.
Did you think that the first time? Now, did you think? Because I remember when we had Konstantin on, he said that he broadly supported the first lockdown, but he was becoming less and less keen on the method.
I broadly supported the first lockdown. I didn't think we knew what was going on. I think we were all very, very confused, very scared, very worried. I think the second successive lockdowns have been an utter disaster for this country economically. The damage that we've done to young people is unfathomable. Look, nobody's denying that this is a serious illness. Of course it is, especially if you're like my parents, like my mother, who is 76 years old, disabled, diabetic, BAME. You tick any box you want with her. She has got it. So, for a section of society, it is very, very worrying. Absolutely is. And the NHS is under pressure. I'm just not particularly comfortable with crippling an entire economy. And I think more people are going to die as a result of that than we're going to save from lockdowns. But that's me. I realise that makes me a Nazi. Hello, everybody.
Just good to get the disclaimers out of the way.
Yeah.
Good to get that out of the way. Well, actually, that leads really nicely into a question I need to ask you, and also Gráinne as well, which is, given what you just said, what's your biggest sort of Twitter engagement that you've had? What in terms of something that maybe went viral, or just something that went a bit crazy with people having a go?
Well, I'll tell you something. It was a tweet I put out. It wasn't my biggest, but it was a tweet I put out a couple of days ago. So people who don't know me, people who do will know that I bang on that. My mum's from Venezuela, right? Hey, there you go. Who knows me? Have a drink. Venezuela is in the absolute toilet at the moment, and has been for a long, long time because of a socialist regime brought about by Hugo Chavez, which was beloved by Guardianistas everywhere and was seen as the future. It's now utterly in the toilet. All the woke journalists have moved on. My family, unfortunately, is still living there. My cousin, who's a journalist, had to flee for his life. And it gets on my tits when people talk about socialism, especially when they're privately educated, middle class, and quite frankly, don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So this is a tweet that I put out, which means that I can now no longer gig at another 6 comedy clubs. But anyway, this is what I think, and I'm sure it will enrage people.
So is that that's actually one of the tweets that you've selected for tonight, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah. So the funniest joke of 2020 will always be middle class, privately educated comedians lecturing me about why socialism is great. Mate, my cousin lives in Venezuela and drinks water from tank on his roof. I think there's a couple of flaws in your argument. I saw that tweet and I do remember thinking, how many floors before he gets to the roof? Like 4 floors. I don't know.
Look, I mean, there's a discussion to be had. I don't believe in utopias. I don't believe that, that somehow we're going to change everything. We're going to abolish capitalism and we're going to be in, this magical paradise where everything's equal. We're all going to hold our hands and everything's going to be brilliant. Because I've seen what happens when you abolish capitalism and it isn't good. Anyway, that's another gig down the drain. So there we go. That was mine.
I've got to say, I feel like sacking the whole show off so we can talk about socialism and lockdown, because that's two big things straight out of the park. So I want to ask the same question to Gráinne. Before I do, if you're watching us on if you're watching us on Twitch, Facebook and YouTube, and you want to see this lovely quad of people that we've got in front of us, at least on the Zoom room, then please go through Eventbrite and book for us and come in and share your tweets with us. It's by far the best view, but thanks for watching wherever you're watching, basically. So Gráinne, what's your sort of big Twitter moment?
So I remember I was on the way to my sister's on the bus, and as is usual in my way, I was having this big neurotic nervous breakdown about stand-up. I was like, oh my God, I'm not even funny anymore. I should just quit comedy, blah, blah, blah. And then a joke popped into my head. I swear this is true. I tweeted it, whatever. Then I got to my sister and my phone was buzzing like a bee, like it was literally buzzing. And it was, it's always sad when Beyonce, there's now more black people in Beyonce than in Donald Trump's cabinet. She doesn't actually.
And I remember that very well.
It was so silly because it was just a silly joke that popped into my head. But I had been so depressed when I had been so depressed. I was on the bus. I was on the way to bloody Stoke Newington in 45 minutes. I was such a bad mood. And then it was just so ridiculous. And it was like I ended up doing an interview with like an Irish newspaper about the tweet. And I was like, but it's just it's a stupid joke. That's what it is. But it really cheered me up because I had been so sad. And then,
but did that get you extra? How many supporters did that get you extra? Any extra followers?
It got me it went mad for about a week. It got me a lot. I can't remember how much, but it did get me a lot more. But more importantly, it got me to feel good about myself for about 4 days. So.
Well, that's all right. 4 days is good. 4 days good. Stretching that out. What about, I know, because we spoke to Rosie Jones and her one was being on Question Time, and I know you were on Question Time as well. Did you find that made a difference for you, or did you get a lot of trolling?
I got like a lot of trolling for about a day. So I don't know. I basically handed my Twitter account over to our mutual friend Hannah Warman. For 24 hours, she just said like really funny replies to everybody who was sort of saying, oh, she's got shit teeth and stuff like that. So that was really funny. And then after about a day, it just, people went back to sleep or whatever they were. And
they went to someone else is what they did. Because how fickle they are. Today you're their hate object, and then tomorrow they just move on to someone else.
They never call, they never write.
No, they never write. They'll never call you right. But that just brings me to the question where I'd like to ask both. Well, I don't know, Julian, have you had been a victim of trolling and death threats? I mean, I don't think we've made it in his career unless you have.
I know that that I would know I will have totally made it then.
Yeah.
I mean, I use Twitter. I have an anonymous account, but it's not like a sort of a trolling account, but it's kind of
a trolling account. Maybe that's it. We all need 2 accounts. One people that can troll, and the other one that people can engage with.
Basically, I would recommend that. It's to engage with sort of issues that I don't really feel as a PR. I mean, I feel a bit like let loose here. This is Julian Hall Unplugged on Let's Kill Twitter, but to some extent. because it has a sort of frontage. But on my own account, you know, I like to follow interesting people, but it's, and like, you know, have a kind of interaction if it's a joke, but it's, I find sort of like delving into the sort of the nitty gritty. What have I put? I've put on my bio says, it quotes this line from Buffy. There's I think season 4, this fantastic character called Adam, who's this sort of monster made up of many parts. And there's an episode in it where he's watching something unfold, and he says, "These magics are unstable." And it's just such a beautiful line, because for me that is literally, I'm just going to let these things play out. I'm going to watch them, and I'm going to learn from them. But you know.
And what about you, Francis? Have you you know, obviously that's Julian's, I think, top tip there.
Yeah.
So what have you? I mean, obviously with trigonometry, I'm assuming that you must get quite a lot of.
Oh, absolutely. Our show antagonises people on the left, on the right, and also the far right. I've been trolled by people calling themselves nationalists. They're not. They're Nazis. Sending me anti-Semitic abuse, even though I'm not Jewish. So I got Constantine, my co-host, is Jewish, so they call him a Jew, and they call me the secret Jew. So as in, like, I don't actually. I'm not, like I said, I'm not Jewish. They also called me the fat Jew, which meant I went to the gym pretty quick after that.
I mean, I don't know, like, because if somebody says, you know, the fat Muslim, I'm kind of like, yeah, you're kind of spot on. What's the abuse here? I don't understand what the abuse is. I'm not sure if that's what you were, but then also yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as I thought you were going to say. I have to be honest, I thought it was going to be worse. And as a woman, I'm going to ask Gráinne, you know, obviously we're kind of targeted in a different way, which can be, you know, you got slightly upset by being called fat, but it'll be personal. You mentioned, like, you know, people said like horrible things about you on Question Time. How do you think it's differs between the genders in terms of how trolls kind of attack women? And of course now it's become illegal we can take out legal action, but obviously we know from other female comedies as well that it's something that's quite a, you know, kind of big problem.
From my experience, I don't know, it's tricky. I don't get a lot of abuse, really. It's more sometimes I got they're called like reply guys. So they're people who, this is what annoys me when people, if I make a joke, you find it funny, brilliant. But when you retweet it and then you kind of put your little like riff at the top, it annoys me so much. It's like, this isn't a brainstorming session. So they'll retweet with like their little ad lib at top, or they'll just, or if they don't understand your joke, then they'll reply as if, yeah, but I don't understand your joke, or why is this funny? And you're just like, I don't know you. If you don't find this joke funny, you can just, there's an easier thing, you can just scroll. That's fine. So it's that, I think that's me being really mean.
I think a great example is Craig Dealey on Twitter. He'll just retweet people who don't get the joke, literally the joke, and he's got a whole sort of series of that, which I think is great. So listen, I think we should get to our tweets. Where we're going to start with, Julian. Thank you guys for contributing that one.
I'm wondering, this might be a good way of introducing a bit of both Twitter and lockdown issues here. It's quite an interesting tweet from, if I can find it, and then we can get into some of the others. So it's Olivia Utley. She's assistant comment editor at Telegraph, and she picked up on a tweet from a woman called Erica Buist, who I think writes for The Guardian. Erica had tweeted, "Is anyone else worried that they're going to vaccinate all the over 50s, then open everything up and start guilting the rest of us, going back to the office, going to pubs, telling us not to worry because we probably won't die?" To which quote tweeted, Olivia Utley quote tweets, "Personally, I'm praying they do exactly this." And I kind of thought, that's probably speaking for quite a large number of people, what Olivia has just said there, I would have thought. So I was slightly confused by that. But the other interesting thing,
I thought that was literally the plan.
Well,
that's
exactly.
So I think what you've pinpointed is their response to COVID.
Well, what I love about this, and I don't know why I didn't favourite this one, I know I retweeted it, I will find it somewhere. Come on. Is that there was a subsequent tweet which was basically oh no, what? See, this is the slickness that's gone. I'm just gonna, because obviously I need her words very much in this to sort of to basically
Just sing amongst yourselves for now.
Yeah, just sing amongst yourselves.
Sing amongst yourselves. Come on, everyone. We could just go for it.
No, that was silly of me. But basically, there's a tweet in there, and I promise I'll find it before the end, where this woman Erica says, I tweeted this out, and then loads of people who this message wasn't meant for have suddenly commented, and I was like, what do you mean? That is the whole point. I mean, I respect what you're saying about the joke earlier, but it's like, what? But hang on a minute, you've just invented Twitter.
So she just invented the government COVID response, and then she accidentally invented Twitter. That's what.
But I'm going to search. I'm going to search for that tweet whilst so that I can prove that she did actually have that response. But that's kind of led us on to sort of lockdowny vaccine things. So I don't know whether actually, Francis, why don't we take your mental health tweet?
All right, so I realise everyone's probably got funny stuff. For me, being a miserable git, I've just come up with all the grim, horrible stuff. This is from a chap called Alan D. Miller. No idea who he is. Probably going to turn out to be some far-right extremist. Doesn't matter. The teens coming through my virtual doors these past months have been suffering with loneliness, a sense of crippling helplessness, and a total lack of motivation. Doesn't have to be this way. Young people severely impacted. We need clear roadmap to open. And I think the reason I found this very, very powerful is I think that we're not talking enough about young people at the very beginning of their careers, people who are looking to start out, people who've just graduated from universities. What is the financial, what is going to be the economic impact, not only on us, but on them? They are particularly vulnerable. And I just really, really worry about them. Like, we've all, like, I'm 38 now, like, my best days are gone. I've accepted that. But
don't say that.
They are, mate. I'm practically dead. Do you know what I mean? What have I got to look forward to?
Surely the dividing line, the modern dividing line is if you're not like between numbers 1 and 9 for getting the vaccine, you can like, hey, I'm officially young.
No, mate. I hate to break it to you. We are not officially young, mate. If we turned up in a nightclub, they'd either look at us like a pair of creeps or undercover police, all right?
At 38? At 38, yeah, my God. 38. And your life is over at 38?
No, I'm not saying it's over. I'm just saying it's shit.
What are you living in, Francis? I'm a bit worried. You're zooming us from the 18th century.
Yeah, I'm going to die of consumption, Gráinne. But I don't know. Like, I'm a former teacher. I was a teacher for 12 years, and I just worry about what this is doing to kids. I worry about young people. I worry about people who are starting out in their careers. I worry about people who are being charged $9,000 a year to go and sit in a room and get a Zoom lecture. You're basically getting charged $9,000 a year to go out to get a shit version of YouTube.
Yeah. When you can get like LKT for free or for just donations. And it's the same worth the same as an education.
Yeah, I've got no idea what LKT is, Chajila, but I couldn't agree with you more.
Let's kill Twitter. Let's put the show that we're on.
Oh, right. Okay, there we go.
Don't worry, you're not alone. You're not alone.
There you go. You've learned something for free today.
Exactly. So
I've got to ask before to just head back to the others. I don't want to sort of jump in too much, but the lockdown sort of dynamics for you in terms of what is the road ahead? Are you a Barrington Declaration man? What's the kind of thing that all the over 70s basically just need to sort of shut themselves in a cupboard for 100 years? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I think the problem is that when we started this, nobody really knew what the virus is, what the virus was. I then think it got to the point with the government where deaths got to such a point where they no longer act in the interests of this country. What they do is they act in a way to protect their own skins. So they're thinking to themselves, we can't let deaths get any higher. We're going to shut everything down, and then we're just going to vaccinate everyone, and then we're going to open everything up, and let's hope for the best. So on my show, we interviewed a man called Professor Karol Sikora, who's one of the foremost oncologists in this country. He was saying that we're expecting around 50,000 excess deaths as a result of lockdown from cancer alone. From cancer alone. By the government's own estimates, lockdown is going to kill more than it saves. And then you just said, well, not only is it going to kill more than it saves, but it's going to absolutely decimate the economy. I can't see the logic behind it. And
see, one of the things I struggle with, and I'm just going to say this and I'm going to shut up. One of the things I struggle with is that a lot of, sitting in my centrist position, a lot of people on the right seem to me struggle with the concept of numbers going up, which slightly worries me. I mean, even Melanie Phillips, not known for her left-wing sensibility, she's on record as basically saying she doesn't understand where some people on the right are with this at all, because the numbers are speaking for themselves. At the end of the day, you can't overwhelm hospitals, because then everyone suffers, as people with cancer appointments have already suffered. So I'm not saying it's an easy answer, but then, obviously the more hospital beds that are taken, then everyone else is getting squeezed out as well.
See, but you're making a very good point, Julian, but then we come to the point of where was the prep? They knew this was going to happen. They knew this was a seasonal illness. They knew this was a flu. We opened Nightingales in the first lockdown. Why didn't they open a Nightingale now? Very few people are saying this isn't important or this isn't vital. I just don't understand the government strategy, if I'm being honest.
Guys?
I think Gráinne, I'd like to know what Gráinne's take is on this.
I just think this is everybody's first global pandemic, and I don't think people know what they're doing. I think it's very complicated, and I think the UK response has just been riddled by an over-reliance on the private sector that's been really bad, really catastrophic. And unfortunately, we don't have the brightest, cleverest people in government, and they're trained to think of short term, what's going to be the headline. And I think that's why the UK's response has been so crap. But I think I just think nobody, and with all respect to Francis, I think anybody who claims to know exactly what to do next should not be trusted, because I don't think anybody
Yes,
because we don't know. And you're saying all this stuff, and in my head I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. This is so terrifying. I just want to wear a mask. I want to stay inside. I want all the older people to be inoculated. And then for me personally, I think it's even going to be worse when things start reopening again, because then it's like we have to deal with the aftermath. I think as terrifying as it is now, and it is horrible, bloody hell, whatever's left of democracy, think what chaos the 2008 crash had, and how we were just beginning to steady ourselves after that, 19 years later. I mean, I'm almost the drama queen in me is almost fascinated by what the fuck is going to happen to us off the back of shutting down the global economy for at least a year. It's truly terrifying. So, yeah, that's my hot take.
Well, going back to the tweet, thanks for that, Gráinne. Going back to the tweet, the teens coming through the virtual doors, basically it's about the mental health of young people, which has been effective. And actually, I'd say anyone who says they haven't struggled with their mental health in the last year is lying, or they're not, or in denial. And it's really important for us more than ever, and whoever's listening in, is to be constantly trying to talk to people about how you're feeling, because chances are they're feeling the same. But one of the things I did read about teenagers recently, and I think that might be partly why we are struggling with our mental health, is that teenagers need, apparently they've done some sort of study where teenagers need 4 hugs a day, so 4 human contacts, which actually sounds really sweet. But it got me thinking. I think that's the thing that I'm quite a tactile person, so I need someone to sort of are you there, or someone, if you're feeling bad, someone touches your hand. And so we're so used to having that contact with people all the time, hugs. Just being close proximity on the train, even though we might whinge about it. And I think that is not good for us to not have, because this virtual world is not the same thing. It's not cutting the same mustard. Had we been in backstage in a live event, which hopefully Let's Kill Twitter, LKT, Francis, will go live one day, we will have that contact, which does, I think, is a very healing, very important thing. So I'm just going to leave it there, saying that if you are feeling lonely out there, please do reach out and at least talk to someone on the phone, even though we can't be with each other right now. So, next tweet. What we got next, Julian? Something fun, maybe something fun.
Should we go fun?
Yeah, let's go fun.
Okay, let's
A little
go
sorbet.
fun. Well, who's right? Hang on, Gráinne. There's a tweet you've picked out. Well, actually, you can totally.
You picked out. We picked out. You picked out. I picked out.
Okay, so there's two parts to this tweet. First
Yeah.
of all, my dad's name is Donny. So, and I didn't realize that was an Irish name because it's I just thought Donny's a normal name, and then when I moved here, everybody was like, "Oh, what's this name?" So my family WhatsApp went crazy the night of, when the capital was stormed and there was
Calamity at the Capitol.
Well, my family went mental, not over that, not the fallover of democracy possibly in America, but that an Irish reporter was stealing the scene in CNN, Donny O'Sullivan. And we were so excited that there was a famous Donny. And basically, Irish people, Americans love Irish people and Irish people love Americans. I know you English people, you think you have a special relationship. We're the ones. They love us. So this was another example of, we're about to have Joe Biden, Irish American president. We just, we had the Obamas, obviously Irish, and now we have Donny O'Sullivan breaking the news on CNN, and Irish Twitter went mad. So it was a bit.
How do you pronounce this lady's name? Fionnuala. Fionnuala, right.
This man, and I have to have him. I love this man, and I have to have him.
Just in case those of you who didn't hear that at the back, she has to have him. What does he do? What's he do on CNN? What's his role?
So he was outside with the protesters, interviewing them. And look at the big. Have you ever seen anybody more Irish looking in your own life? Look at the big head of him. And he basically was just representing, and all of Ireland, our collective back stiffened with pride at Donny O'Sullivan doing us all pride. So it really cheered me up.
That's good. And that it's American, so it kind of does segue quite nicely into back to the serious stuff. I've picked, I'm not sure, I think we've got a couple of, I picked two tweets that could probably just go very quickly. It's Glenn Greenwald replying to Ron Paul, who is a Republican congressman, former Republican congressman, I should say, from Texas. Ron Paul's complaining that with no explanation other than repeatedly going against our community standards, Facebook has blocked me from managing my page. Never have we received notice for violating community standards in the past, and nowhere is the offending post identified. Glenn Greenwald is saying, just pass a law that the internet is for liberals only. Now, Glenn Greenwald is known to many people for his work on Edward Snowden's whistleblowing, and I don't think particularly, certainly not regarded as someone of the right, but he's very, very concerned about the ramifications of the Twitter ban on Donald Trump, and that kind of was kicked off pretty close to calamity at the Capitol, because it was only a couple of days afterwards that Twitter banned him. But there were a good few tweets in the last week, one of which was also David Baddiel saying, whilst I support Trump's ban, people need to stop it with the Twitter is a private company argument. We never in history have had private companies monopolizing the public discourse on the scale of big tech, and that's exactly why they need public regulation. And that's over to you. Although one thing I would just say to sign off, it is interesting how during Brexit, I did vote Remain, but I will say that during Brexit and the votes, there were an awful lot of people who wouldn't normally say the Constitution is precious and all we must follow the Constitution. So all these sort of born again constitutionalist lefties, and now it seems like the Twitter thing has sort of awoken the sort of private company loving lefties as well. There's a interesting political dynamic going on here.
I think it's interesting. I think my instinct is that I know Twitter and social media does kind of create the weather that news is reported in, but I mean, I think when you're in the media, it gives you a false impression of how many people are actually on Twitter. And again, it is just a private company. And I just feel, I find it fascinating that, the right, which historically is all about capitalism and, pro-business and getting the government out, suddenly is really angry when a Twitter, private company decides for themselves the sort of people they want on their platform. I just find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to highlight the various sort of machinations on this, but I don't know, Francis, this is probably very much your territory, really, big tech.
I wouldn't say it's my territory, to be honest with you. What I would say is Glenn Greenwald, who's talking about this, is a very well-known left-wing journalist, a very left-wing libertarian, I'd say, who was one of the people who has a internet website called The Intercept, which is very, very good, I would say, progressive left-wing journalism. He's now left The Intercept. So that's a little bit of background about who Glenn Greenwald is. I'm actually quite a big fan. I think he does very, very, very good work. The problem is that when you have 4 or 5 companies in charge of disseminating public information, that is a very, very, very dangerous place to be in. I can't remember the name. It's just escaped me. I think he's an Israeli philosopher who tweeted this quote when Trump was silenced, which was, "When you can silence the king, you are the king." And what you effectively have now is these companies who can effectively silence someone, and that is it. And there's no recourse. There's no way of protesting. They decide. So a good example of this, and can I just say, I'm not on the right, despite what probably everyone thinks here. Primary school teacher, 12 years. We can go through the whole list. I realise I've been disowned by the left, but that's cool. But the problem comes when somebody can just shut down an account, or they can suppress stories. For instance, during the American presidential election, there was a number of allegations about Joe Biden's son, and corruption allegations, all the rest of it. Now, this is absolutely true. Twitter suppressed that story. The New York Post, America's oldest newspaper, ran a story about it, and Twitter suppressed it. They suppressed the account, they suppressed the story. And that happened during an election year. And actually, when they asked 10% of Americans if that would if they asked in a poll Americans if that would actually persuade them to not vote for Joe Biden, 10% said yes. So this is very, 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 very dangerous stuff. I'm not pretending I know the answers to this.
Francis,
well, the problem, can I just finish my point?
Sorry.
Yeah, but the problem is when you have these companies which have this huge amount of power, whether it's, for instance, YouTube. So, for instance, YouTube deleted Talk Radio's account. And Talk Radio are a company regulated by Ofcom. And the reason they did it is because they had on experts and they platformed people who criticised lockdown. That contravened YouTube's rules. Bang, gone. These people are dictating what is and what isn't acceptable to talk about. I just find it a very worrying state of affairs. That's all. Go for it, Gráinne.
Well, no, but I just... so Twitter obviously is a very big platform, but people are getting so much more of their news now from independent, smaller news YouTube channels, that are increasingly far right, that get so many more views than mainstream news. I mean, in America, Republicans are much more likely to get their news from independent vloggers than they are from, mainstream news channels. So I do think it's just, I mean, obviously the internet is fucked and destroying us all, yes. But I do think there are lots of other platforms available online. I think Twitter is quite like, I think because we're all in this is our bubble, but I just think there's so many other very toxic platforms for the very sort of people who say that there be no platform on Twitter. They have this huge megaphone in other areas. And I just find it funny that you have, these senators speaking in Congress, senators, these Congress people talking in Congress with wearing face masks saying censored. And they're on the news. So I just think the whole idea of being censored and no platforms and all that stuff. I think it's become like a badge of honor, and it doesn't have any meaning, I think, anymore, because there's just so many platforms nowadays.
That's an interesting take, that there doesn't have any meaning anymore of being censored, when we, as obviously comedians, are in the business of having to at least have answered that question once a year to a journalist or someone asking us what we think about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Now, obviously, we missed that week when it was the busy week, Julian, but Twitter's shares went down with them banning Trump. Which was hilarious, because it made you think, well, what is that? Why they didn't ban him before? You know, and I was questioning that, like why the shares would have come down at that point. So that was quite frightening, and also quite I found it quite hilarious at the same time. It's just, really, who are these Trumpies that are keeping Twitter shares alive?
I was a bit worried that I might have to change the name to Let's Kill Insert Platform Here.
Let's Kill Parler. Oops.
That's it. Yeah. Well, that's already dead at the moment. Yeah. Although I notice, I mean, there's legal action going on there. It's interesting what Gráinne says about the sort of congressmen who are complaining about being censored, and I think there is some unease about the fact that old media is sort of still in its death throes, and new media is in an ascendancy to some extent. So I think when people say things like that, it's basically them saying, I can't get access to that particular base. There is a lot of sort of hypocrisy on both sides there. It's still sorting itself out. There's no doubt about it in terms of what the upshot is. I mean, there was quite an interesting. So the BBC's Amal Rajan was on the media show on, I think quite often hosts the media show on Radio 4. And he actually had Parler's lawyer there on a panel with one of someone who'd done sort of work for the Democrats, I think. So it was quite an interesting conversation. There is a lot of shared anxieties about new media of both left and right, but there are clearly some people, taking the pee on both sides as well, I think.
Oh, of course, and this is a problem, and this is a problem which is created by social media, that it amplifies the binary, because a tweet that is actually very nuanced is highly unlikely to go viral, but something that says I'm being silenced or everybody on the right is a hateful Nazi is more likely to get retweets. So number one, and number two, the problem is like, so with Gráinne saying, like, there's lots of different platforms. There was a platform for people on the right to use, and then it got nuked. So it was just like, well, and then they took it down, and their reasoning was, well, it was filled with hate and racism. I think that's every social media platform, let's be honest. I don't think anybody ever goes on Twitter and goes, oh, this is going to cheer me up. Number one.
I do.
I think Parler's problem was the subtext was the text. That's where they went wrong. I think, like, obviously they're both just awful, like platforms, just basically looking to make money. Like, Twitter isn't a force for good. It just is a platform that wants to make money. And they kept Trump on there for as long as possible because it brought so much, traffic to the site, and they took him off. The only reason they took him off was, okay, his worth to us now isn't worth if he possibly instigates an actual terrorist attack. And that's the only reason he got taken off. And possibly when things cool back down again, he'll be back up. And I think Parler, bless their heart, your whole thing is, don't be racist on our platform. That isn't a good business model. So if they just dialed it down just a little bit,
you're being censored by Zoom at the moment.
We're losing. It's
Google is censoring you. They're
they are. But it's such an interesting point what Gráinne was just making. So I hope we can get you back. And listen, guys, if you are in the front seat or if you are watching the live stream, please do send us your comments. Let us know what you think about this. And at this point, while Gráinne gets her sound back, I'm going to advertise Amnesty's face mask, which says, "Cover your mouth, not your opinion." There you go. Amnesty face mask, cover your mouth, not your opinion. So you can actually say what you want to say and be your own advertising thing for your own opinions and your own views. Granny, are we back with you now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. That's better. Yeah.
Oh my God, what was I waffling about?
It was really great.
You're saying the last thing that I really heard you say was the parlour's problem was ...
Oh, basically, their subtext was text. They were like, come be racist and troll people on our platform. But if you've got no goodies, like everybody needs an enemy. And why Parler wasn't, because it was just all the right-wing people who like trolling people went to Parler, so they had nobody to troll. So they had just been a little bit more subtle and it probably would have been fine.
Okay, thank you, Gráinne. Thank you, Francis. Right, so another treaty weety. Come on, we know we both got it. Are we going to save that to last? The one we've both been shitting about.
Well, I think we should have. Should we have a Sex and the City special for the last?
Yeah, Sex and the City. Sex and the City.
I don't know how we're going to manage it otherwise.
Well, yeah. I think let's just go with both the tweets that we've both selected then.
Well, there's about 3 or 4 good ones actually.
Really? Okay, go on then. Go for it.
So we've got. You've been following Jack Monroe. Yeah, so Julie, you've been following Jack Monroe's.
Yes. And that was. Hang on, let me see if I can get it.
I don't know where we are with that because that seems to have moved on again.
Okay, so let me try to find.
This was the original. This was about 5 days ago, where she's indicating, all those pictures of the rubbish.
Parcels, yeah.
Not since my student toast toppers in my student freshers pack have I seen a worse offering. But yeah, it's. So that was the first one. That's. I'm not sure where we are now.
So yeah. So the latest one was, as far as I can see, that it became successful. And everyone was congratulating her, saying, well done, because everyone sent. You've all seen the photos, right? The photos they were sending of their meager food parcels to kids, and it was just disgusting. It was awful. And I remember having free school dinners when I was a kid. And when I was in the country, and there was a little bit of shame around that. You had to get a school dinner disc. So what I would do is I'd deliberately be a bit late for school and get the dinner disc, but then sell it to the kids who had more money and for the money, and then get the money and get fish and chips from the shops at lunchtime, which is what I really want to do because I'm a rebel. Yeah. But we weren't eating meat at school. Couldn't eat halal meat. Couldn't eat meat. So they would put peanuts and cheese and other things that sort of made up the protein in those days. But although that was embarrassing, it was still nutritious food that we were getting. And then to think that this is a replacement, these photos, I don't know if you've got any of the photos, but I'm sure we've all seen them this past week, a couple of weeks. And so the reason why I brought this up particularly was because it was kind of Twitter activism. So we've talked about Twitter, the previous tweet conversation of being used for evil and bad, but doesn't Twitter or social media platforms also work quite effectively in getting things done? Obviously, we know, Marcus Rashford, managed to do the whole school meal things. This has obviously come up where now the government are deciding. I don't know how we felt, the panel, how we felt about the vouchers versus delivering the food parcels. I mean, which so now they've gone back to giving them vouchers so they can choose their own food. And I know that was in a radio discussion about the same thing. Like, would you be given, would you take that vouchers? And I think it's about when people don't have much, what they do have is their dignity. And if you strip them of that last thing, then they have nothing left and you have literally destroyed that person. That's how I feel. So when you are in a vulnerable position, when I was someone who didn't have much income, single parent, whatever, I was a lot more sensitive to someone saying, oh, why can't you come out? Is it because you can't afford it? To now where it wouldn't affect me, because now I'd be thinking, well, I'm confident, I'm secure, so I don't have those same issues. So when we're having these discussions, even these discussions, I'm quite wary that the people at the other end of them, that how are we making them feel that, they're the ones that, and they're not going to speak out. So it does activism on social media is it effective, and should we be doing more of that than maybe some of the negative stuff with the trolling and the Trump sort of debates that we're having? And that's what I'd like to ask. Can I ask Francis first? What do you feel about using social media for a better cause, as it were?
So I think we live in quite rarefied times in that everybody is on social media, nobody's in the outside world. So in this instance, I think, yes, social, activism does actually work on social media because everybody's on it 24/7 because we can't go out. I actually think that most of the time activism on social media is a glorified cop-out. I think that if you want to do something, you would do it in the real world. I always say this to people who were going to me, well, what name one thing I can do to make a difference? And I'm like, well, you can go to your local primary school. If you've got 15 minutes in the day, most primary schools are underfunded. There's 30 kids in a class, teachers trying to teach them. You've got ability levels ranging from a kid who can barely write their own name to someone who's very, very talented and whatever else and could go to university, Oxford, Cambridge, all the rest of it. There are kids there who are being left by the wayside. Take 15 minutes, go into a primary school, sit down, read with a kid. That will achieve far more than any tweets or retweets that you will do, guaranteed. Because what you are doing is helping kids who are being left behind because the system is being underfunded, and you are helping them with the most precious thing in the world, literacy. And if you read with a kid for 15 minutes every week, I guarantee you will make a positive impact on their life. Because not only are you reading with them, but you're giving them attention, and that's probably something they're lacking with at home. However, considering that the real world doesn't exist anymore, and we're now all on Twitter, yeah, it probably is.
Gráinne?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Twitter is a neutral. It's like a tool, and whenever we have a new invention, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. But there's no substitute for actually doing something. So whether it's like donating money if you can during lockdown, or going out there and actually contributing, or whatever it is, the hard stuff, the actual real stuff like volunteering, is much more worthwhile than retweeting something, unfortunately.
It is easier to retweet though, and more.
Yeah. And if that's all you can do, especially when in these difficult times, then surely that's better than not doing anything at all. But I will say that one of the things that I think came up during lockdown was how there has been more of a sort of social media community, even within like our own industry. Someone's gone through a hard time, had an operation, whatever, and the comedy community specifically, but others got on board and they will support and look after. So I found that quite kind of reassuring. I don't know about you, because there's something, it's not all bad. There is good stuff when we can't see each other physically, that we are there supporting each other online. Right. So what else have we got? Twitter.
Right, I think we need to. I need to get into this Sex and the City sandwich, or cake. So basically, the story is, I'm not sure many of you know, but the story is that there will be a reboot of Sex and the City, 10 episodes. And it is called "And Just Like That," which is one of sort of Carrie's much used phrases in the show. It's going to feature the original cast except for Kim Cattrall and playing Samantha. So no Samantha, Sex and the City without Samantha. Don't know about that. So it's caused, well, it's had quite a lot of feedback on Twitter, partly because there's a lot of people watching Sex and the City for the first time and reevaluating it, and boy, it was evaluated enough at the time. So let's come on, revisionists, let's get going. But before there's a whole stream of tweets, and I'll share those in a minute. But I must admit, from my I'm a big fan. I think I've watched it twice this year, slightly by accident. Comedy was being repeated on Comedy Central, and it got to about series 3, and I thought, I'm going to watch this as my background telly. And then I started from the beginning again, and I've seen it quite a few times now. But I also worked as a barman when the films were out, and I tell you something: after you've made that many Cosmopolitans for people coming in to see Sex and the City 2, which was pretty abysmal as a film, I still love it, is what I'm saying. But a lot of other people love it, but there's a lot of qualification to that love. Now let's have a look at these tweets. So when the actual announcement,
whilst you're looking for the tweets, just to let all of our front seaters know, and all those who are tuning in, you can put your questions or your contributions to any tweets that you'd like to talk about into our box there, or on just wherever you're live watching the live stream on our page. Oh yeah, here's this Kim Cattrall's agent.
Yeah, so there's a famous episode where Carrie gets dumped on a post-it note by a character called Berger, and he just says, "I'm sorry, I can't. Don't hate me." So Rose Domu's tweet here is that it's come from Kim Cattrall's agent, which is perfect. I saw people retweeting that as if it had come from Kim Cattrall. No way, because as a lot of people know, Kim Cattrall and Sarah Jessica Parker are not on the best of terms, being a big rift between the two for some time. So I don't think she would have been that polite on a post-it note, to be honest with you. So what else have we got? Aisha Hazarika, who'll be with us in 2 weeks. Excited about the return of Sex and the City, but get real. Surely it's now HRT in the suburbs. And we've got, hang on a second. Actually, so we've got Stella Duffy.
Oh, yeah, Stella Duffy was it?
That was the one that you sent.
Whilst you're looking for that, just want to ask you guys, team Samantha or team what's the name? Stella Duffy. There you go.
But it's like astrology, isn't it? You know, how much Carrie are you? How much Charlotte are you? How much Samantha are you? How much Miranda are you?
Okay, so again, the Stella Duffy's one was, I guess it might be worth reviving if Sex and the City was actually feminist this time round, or less absurdly white, or both, which I thought.
Yeah, Gráinne's space is pretty much summing up my. So we need to get to that, because this is.
Erica, we've got someone who wants to talk about something. Hello, Erica. Did you want to speak? Or speak now for older piece? What would you like to say?
Team Samantha.
Okay.
No.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I thought you just put your hand up.
So I mean, that does open up, because I mean, that's sort of revisionism for you. I mean, I've watched it twice again this year and not felt too guilty about it. I mean, for goodness sake, I'm watching Entourage now. I feel like I'm in some kind of dangerous cult. And then also, now this, Gráinne, you picked up on this tweet from Hadley Freeman at The Guardian, and I was interested because I saw your response to this, and I wanted to pick up on this in terms of how you sort of dealt with this. But she said, I like Hadley actually, but I find it fascinating that Sex and the City, a show about a bunch of white women making jokes and shagging, is considered embarrassingly retro and borderline offensive. But The Sopranos, a bunch of white men killing each other and some shagging, but not much, is considered an untouchable classic. Let's start with you, Gráinne, because you had a bit of a take on that.
So I'm really worried my sound is going to cut out, because I have so many thoughts on this. So I'm going. If my sound cuts out, honestly, just flag me up. And I apologize to Francis, Sadila, and Julian. Just mute me. Just mute me. So what I found so fascinating about this tweet, and I don't mean to be negative about another woman online, but I just couldn't believe what a stupid hot take that was, but how many interesting points she raised at the same time. Because I think Sex and the City, when people say, oh, it's not feminism, and oh, it's really white, and they make all these points that obviously, yes, but this was made 20 years ago. So at the time, like, you have to think, it's like when people are slagging off Friends now. It's like, yes, but at the time, we weren't there yet as a society. You wouldn't make the same program like that now, obviously. But at the time, Sex and the City was really exciting. There'd be no show like that where it's like celebrating women, where it wasn't just like one woman and, you know, the men in her life. It was revolutionary to have women together talking to each other. Yes, they were talking about men. Yes, obviously. And obviously, there's loads of things you would change now. But at the time, it was fabulous. It's really well written. Would you make it the same way now? No, obviously not. What else? There's so many thoughts going around in my head. Now, what Hadley says, which is very interesting, is that do we as a society value the TV series Sex and the City the same way as we do as The Sopranos? Well, that's interesting, because it's like, obviously, we as a society don't value female voice stuff, and we don't value comedy as well as we value, you know, traditionally male drama. No, hardly. That's a very interesting point. Now, why are you slagging off The Sopranos for no reason? Call The Sopranos a show that glorifies like toxic masculinity is so stupid. It's like you have not watched one. You could just watch half an episode of The Sopranos and you'd be like, we are not supposed to like these people. These are obviously, this is not what the, it's like, you know, people who slag off Mad Men by saying, oh, it's just glamorizing, you know, sexism, when the whole point of Mad Men is everybody in this show is miserable. So, to conclude.
This is good. I love a TV rant, I've got to say. And also, I don't know anyone who slags off. I've never talked to anyone who slags off Mad Men.
My boyfriend, right, one of the first rows we had, he's in the other room, and I'm still annoyed with him about it. He was like, oh, I hate Mad Men. It's just all misogyny, and you're supposed to be like, oh, the men are so cool. When the whole point of Mad Men is that, like, Don Draper hates himself. Anyway, so Sex and the City, I think it will probably be really bad, the reboot. Will I watch every single episode at least twice? Yes. Yes, I will.
It's not going to be as bad as the films, is it? Let's face it.
Well, that's really a nice kind of you know, a kind of a stream of consciousness about your opinions on Sex and the City, and we kind of know where you stand on that. And I kind of agree with some of it, disagree with some of others bits. But what about you, Francis? What's your let's see where you stand on this.
I'm going to incriminate myself here by telling you that I've never watched The Soprano, and I've watched every episode of Sex and the City.
Oh, bless you.
Who had that in the week? No one.
Who would have predicted that? I love the original series of Sex and the City. I thought it was groundbreaking. I thought the characters were brilliant. I thought it was superbly written. It was really funny. The character of Samantha was revolutionary, a woman in touch with her sexuality and making no bones about it and not apologizing for it in the slightest. I thought it was brilliant. I also feel it was 20 fucking years ago. We need to get some new ideas and we need to move on. There's loads of stories that need to be told now from a whole variety of perspectives. Why revisiting something from 1996?
Here.
That's it.
Oh, there you go. Steve, front seat have spoken. The front seat has spoken.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rebooting. Did you watch the other series, Francis, as well? Have you watched all of them?
Yeah, I watched all of them, and I watched the first film, and it was complete shit, and I left it.
Yeah, no, very wise.
Do you know what it's like, right? It's like having a mate when you're young and you had a fucking great time with them and you're like, oh, really nice. And then you meet them 10 years later and you go, you're a dick.
I think that's pretty much sums it up. Yeah.
Are you talking about Sex and the City now?
Yeah, Sex and the City.
Or The Sopranos.
He's not seen The Sopranos, so
I haven't seen The Sopranos.
They're all a bunch of Samanthas in The Sopranos. That's what you need to know.
Well, I'm not interested, Gráinne, because I'm not interested in toxic masculinity, love.
Well, actually, I think I won't be watching because Samantha was my favourite character, and I've never liked Jessica Parker. I've never liked her character. I don't like. I think she'd piss me off. She would be just irritate me. Went for a drink in a bar. I'd have too many drinks and just want to punch her. I don't like her. I don't like her. She's always pissed me off in Sex and the City. She pisses me off in real life, and I just can't stand her. I just can't stand her. I can't. And that's it. And my enjoyment was spoiled of Sex and the City. And I know she was a big part of it, right? But I just didn't. So the bits that Samantha came on, and you're right. I agree with Gráinne. I agree with Francis on this. It was groundbreaking. It was wonderful that she owned her sexuality, and it was that. And so when people say that it's not feminism, not it's sexism in the city, well, I thought she was great. She was a great kind of at that time. Of course, we are talking about that time. And of course, the biggest fan here right now is Julian, because we talk about this. You see, we're both friends, lovers, and we've had Sex in the City conversations. So I think we should end with Julian's thoughts on this, because I know how much you love that show.
It's very generous of you. I don't think I'm going to compete with Gráinne's. Well, basically Francis's revelation and Gráinne's speech there. I was thinking a bit about this, and there's a lot to unpack in those tweets. But I do think, like, so for the generation who are watching it now, and there are people who've tweeted recently, journalists have been saying, oh, I'm watching Sex and the City for the first time, just to see how triggered they get, I suppose. I mean, there's going to be a few sort of difficult moments for them, like, for example, the episode where Donald Trump is in the background of one of them, maintaining his incredible record of appearing in sitcoms and American TV shows. It's ridiculous. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, obviously his own show, The Apprentice, but there were a lot of other shows that he had cameos in. Home Alone is a film. Wasn't he in Home Alone as well? Didn't watch Home Alone, but he's in that. But the other one, there's an episode towards the end last season when Samantha's with what's the lovely model actor?
Smith Jarrett.
Oh,
that's the one.
And they're at a party together. I'm not sure if it's the Richard Wright party or whatever, but Samantha has to go, and she says to Smith Jarrett, "Oh, you should stay. Harvey Weinstein's at the party, so not everything will have aged well." I wouldn't be surprised to see that line actually disappear.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the cancel culture thing as well, because obviously what the other tweet that followed on from this, and it's what Gráinne has touched on it already, was the one for Greece. It's by Neil Neil something, whatever his name is, Neil _F.
Is this one of yours?
Yeah. I don't know if you picked it up. But basically, just to read it out, it says, how ridiculous have the woke snowflake brigade become? They are now demanding that the film Grease is never shown on TV because it condones rape, homophobia, slut-shaming, racism and bullying. For fuck's sake, grow up. It's a 40-year-old film. Now, the thing is, kind of touching on what Gráinne said, the film's set in a certain time when, same argument with Sex and the City, where that was the norm. I mean, I've grown up, as a teenager when boys didn't use Rohypnol. They used alcohol to get girls drunk to be friendly. I can't rewrite that history. That is what happened. This is what's happening in Greece. And Greece happens to be one of my favorite childhood films, where I just remember, watching it about 5 or 6 times, just loving it. And so those memories associated with it, I don't really want anyone to just destroy that joy for me. So it's like saying, slagging off The Wizard of Oz, when that was like every Christmas, that was a highlight. However, Sound of Music, you can slag that off because I'm sorry, she was a bitch, right? I'm all about Team Baroness. No, Baroness, right? The Baroness, I'm on her side.
She's happier without those kids. That was an
fuck off
story of a woman and her gay friend, having adventures in the mountains. She's the true hero in that film.
Who is
the Baroness?
The Baroness, exactly. I'm Team Baroness.
Yeah,
she's a fierce kick-ass. Why would she want to bring up his 6 spoiled brat kids? Right, I'd be with her side. It's like, no, why? I'm not your housemaid. Like, so she was asserting authority, and that's fine. But the nun, she just, Julie Andrews, she's a bitch, and no one addresses this.
Maria took a bullet for that woman. That was
she did.
Friendship.
Yeah.
I've got no idea what either you're banging on about. So
you can forget lockdown and big tech. This is where it's at. I mean,
it's all gone ugly over the
But basically, the bottom line is that it's about looking back at things that we saw when we were growing up, or like Sex and the City, like Grease, like Sound of Music, whatever, and then coming at it from the 21st century, new culture where everything is woke. And I don't know, it's about cancel culture as well, because I think that, where do we stand on that? Do we view stuff with this is what was happening back then? We can't, it's like rewriting, what happened in Nazi Germany, or just because, it's going to be triggering. This is what happened. This is historical. So where do we stand on that? About, perhaps I am talking a little bit about cancel culture here, and just the enjoyment of things that we loved growing up, which now become sort of politically incorrect and wrong.
Let me tell you the most offensive thing about Greece, as far as I'm concerned, is that it had people my age playing teenagers. Right? That's the most offensive thing about that film.
That's a weird trait, isn't it? That kind of goes through everything. Like, in Buffy, they were all much older, particularly
Olivia
Christmas
Newton-John.
Carpenter, who played Zander's girlfriend.
But Julian, you can't have a teenager with crow's feet, mate. It doesn't make sense.
Hey, I'm not in casting.
Doesn't make sense. You're watching this going, I'm sorry, I can't suspend disbelief. If the kid on stage is trying to seduce a woman and he's going to need Viagra to do it. I'm like,
Cordelia was the character name, because I can't get my Buffy on. I've got to say that, because I've got this camel-like propensity to just rewatch stuff, and admittedly a lot of it's in the background when I'm working. Friends is all kind of almost always on. Sex and the City I've watched a lot. This last year has been the year of the rewatch. Watched Thrones again. I don't know how many times I've seen The Wire now. It's ridiculous, but I think I watched The Sopranos again, and Breaking Bad. But I'm watching like Entourage now, and I think Mad Men I'd seen again recently. And I've got to say, a lot of these shows, I don't think they'd be made now. I mean, John Hamm has pretty much said that he doesn't think Mad Men.
But no, the whole point. Sorry, Julian. I love Mad Men. The whole point of Mad Men is that toxic masculinity and the pressure to live up to this mythic idea about what men are supposed to be like is eating the male characters up on the inside. Like Don Draper is literally, he's like a drag queen. He's like performing the character of Don Draper, which is a performance that makes him incapable of intimacy or friendship or happiness of any way. And then all the other men around him are like trying to live up to this Don Draper character that doesn't exist. So I think stuff. Yeah, I'm just ranting about Mad Men.
No, it's good.
I think that's really relevant. Yeah, I think it's really relevant, because also it's about, if you're now, are we in a position where if we start when we get back out there to start making proper films or content, do we now make it from the perspective of where we are woke and politically correct, and go back in history and do that? Because I've been watching a Spanish drama recently, the Velvet. I love it. I love all the Spanish stuff. I had to start going to the foreign stuff. And in that, it's kind of the Mad Men kind of era, 50s, 60s. And obviously, but what they've done is they've empowered the women, which is great. But historically, they would have, sort of struggled to get their own way. And do we rewrite history is what I'm trying to ask. Is that, do we sort of make it like, yes, these women were going to gung-ho, we got all these things, and men weren't sexist, they were such gentlemen. Are we going to lie effectively? Because that is what I see, is like not report back what really was happening. Because surely you show the truth, that empowers the generation today to know that that's what it was like. We don't want to go back to that.
Well, because there was this Netflix series, Hollywood. Ryan Murphy made it.
I watched it,
like,
yeah.
So it's like this fake history of what would Hollywood be like if, they're able to overcome racism and sexism and homophobia. But in a way, that's offensive to the people who actually lived through that period, because it was kind of like, well, if you just tried a little bit harder, institutionalized sexism and homophobia and racism wouldn't exist anymore. So the people that lived through this period of that real toxic masculinity that we're still, grappling with, if we kind of pretend it was all like kick-ass women being cool, I mean, that's offensive to them, and it's offensive to audiences. It's not true. I find it much more interesting to be like with Mad Men, for example, or like The Sopranos, where it's like, what is it like to be these people trapped in this structure, and what effect does that have on you and your opportunities and your personalities? That's what's so fascinating. So it's not like you're not celebrating it, but you're getting an insight into it, which is
I think it's a great point that Gráinne made, because I never watched Hollywood, but I'm very much interested in the story of Rock Hudson. For those of you who don't know, Rock Hudson was a matinee idol. He was very much, I would say, the George Clooney of his time. He was a gay man, closeted, and he was actually the first celebrity to die of AIDS. I think it was in '84. And they sort of portrayed his character as being quite out and quite flamboyant. And there was a lot of people who still knew him at that time connected, go, this is deeply offensive. This is a man who suffered, who could never be himself. who knew that the moment that he was open about his sexuality, his life and his career were absolutely done, finished, over. And as a result, he died in the closet. And then you've got people going on going, oh, yeah, but let's all be open and, liberal. He's like, yeah, I don't think it would have ended well for him. Do you know what I mean? So I just, I think what people want, the vast majority of people, whether it's comedy, whether it's drama, whatever it is the truth of the situation. If you try and represent something as honestly as possible, then people will respect that, because what you're trying to do is hold a mirror up to society, which is, I think, what we want from our art, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, what a great, I totally agree. And also bringing race into it, Merle Oberon, didn't she pass off as white because she was scared her career was going to end? And that's the kind of stuff that was happening that I think should be reflected. And time's running out, so I'm going to bring over to Julian, because Julian, we've got something to tell them, haven't we? About the thing behind you.
Well, certainly that, yeah. But I wanted to just say, if there's anyone, well, I know there's people in the Zoom room. So you guys in the Zoom room, obviously, thanks very, very much for coming. If you've got any questions just in the last couple of minutes, or any tweets that you want to share, please use the chat facility to do that. I was going to try and find a fancier phrase, but I couldn't. So yeah, please use the chat facility to ask any questions or share any tweets. Behind me is my lovely screen for Buy Me a Coffee, which is what we're using for our donation. So if you just go to the Buy Me a Coffee website and go to Let's Kill Twitter, you can donate to us. You can also donate to get back catalogue, basically. So all of our shows that are available through there, we just drop us an email through there, make a donation, drop us an email, and we'll send you the links to our shows. And we've had some great shows. Konstantin Kissing with Viv Groskop, Leo Kurz with Shazia Mirza. I'm losing track of the weeks now. What was the last one we did? Anyway, they're all there. They're all listed. So do check that out. Obviously, please follow us on our Twitter account. That's the main thing, at LKT Zoom. And next, I keep saying next week, but I mean 2 weeks hence, on January the 31st, we've got at 8 o'clock, we've got comedians and commentators Aisha Hazarika and Andrew Doyle. So please do book into the Zoom room for that. And I think that's all the necessary boxes ticked.
Yeah, Gráinne and Francis, can you just put your Twitter and your other handles into the chat box so that people can follow us? Please do follow our guests today and from the past. And Francis, have you got something to plug? If you have, please also put in the chat box. Can you just tell us about Trigonometry when it's on?
Trigonometry, just follow it at Trigger Pod. It's on all the different platforms to get people from across the spectrum, left, right, centre. We've got someone on, we've got one of the co-founders of Extinction Rebellion. We've had everyone from George Galloway right the way through to Douglas Murray. So whatever you're interested in, come and you'll find something to chat about, just to find out about. That's what we do.
And Gráinne, what are you doing during lockdown? Are you still doing your classes? What have you got to promote here?
Mainly, I'm watching a lot of Netflix.
Okay, you can give us your suggestions, or you can tell us where we can find your website, perhaps, or because obviously, if you people out there who are listening, if you want, it comes highly recommended. Gráinne does teach comedy, and there are Zoom gigs to be had. So if you want to find out more, please get in touch with Gráinne Maguire. She's put her Twitter up there. It's at Gráinne Maguire on Twitter, and you have a website as well. Is that right?
I do. GráinneMaguire.co.uk.
Yeah, please do follow our guests on Twitter and anywhere else that they're performing on Zoom. Thank you all for coming as well, by the way, guys. And can we just remind them if it's Buy Me a Coffee?
Yeah, just buy me. I mean, I'll move out of the way again.
Buymeacoffee.com. Buymeacoffee.com / Let's Kill Twitter. And so yeah, I'll have a flat white, please, with the soya milk, if that's all right. And that costs £45. So yeah, thanks for that coffee, guys.
That's great. That was really good fun, guys. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, Gráinne and Francis. Big round of applause for you guys. Thank you so much. Can't do this without you guys. And you guys for joining us. Take care.
Yeah, thanks very much.